in that, as you know, a pig has split hooves. So from its outside, from just looking at the animal, you would go, well, this animal's probably kosher. But the animal doesn't chew its cud. So it kind of fails its test internally. So it is a way of viewing the idea of being kosher, being fit, is not always something that's visible to the eye.
Mm.
Just because something seems a certain way doesn't mean you don't have to examine it or your own actions or feelings on an internal level. So I really like the teaching.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Be
That's
interested
great.
to see how the kids connect with that.
Somehow.
You know, part of our bar bat mitzvah program is the rabbi takes the student for a walk. And I used to always walk the kids to Starbucks there at Tatum and Thunderbird.
Right.
And they a number of months ago, they closed. So I was sort of at a loss. And now I've started to walk them to Dunkin' Donuts at Tatum and Greenway.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a young man with me the other day. Let's see if I can get a little more light there. The other day, and oh, that's somebody screen sharing. Yeah, whoever's screen sharing. We love you.
It's me. I made a mistake.
Oh, okay, well, no worries.
I'll get back. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, this kid, we walk up to the counter. I asked him to order whatever he wanted, and he ordered some kind of a croissant sandwich with bacon in it. It was all I could do to just, keep a straight face and
Right.
be non-judgmental and just sit with him and have his bar mitzvah conversation over his croissant, and bacon and egg sandwich.
That's great. I remember taking the confirmation class once to do a Jewish LA trip. And I don't remember what meal it was, but we went to a delicatessen with like these 12 or 14 kids, myself and Rabbi Berlin. This kid comes up to us, he says, "Do I have to keep kosher on this trip?" And we were just sort of like, you can do whatever you want. We won't discuss that part with your parents.
Yeah, when we did the Cuba trip, I said, I'm not the kosher police.
I'm not watching you.
Good morning,
I,
all.
for one, appreciated that.
Hi, Barry. How's it
Good
going?
morning. Oops, here we go.
I think kashrut is one of those things that more than any other Jewish observance, I find that there's a broad variety of ways that people approach how they express that particular mitzvah in their lives. People have the most nuanced understandings of kashrut. I actually went to rabbinical school with a woman who said she kept strictly kosher except for Chinese restaurants. In Chinese restaurants, everything was kosher in a Chinese restaurant.
In the world.
Yeah. Well, excuse me for a moment. I have a technical question, not a kashrut question.
Uh-huh.
Why is it sometimes I see a green telephone on the screen? When people
That's because somebody is calling in who doesn't have
Oh, I see.
audio or video capability. But when you get the Zoom invitation and it says, it gives a whole list of phone numbers.
Right,
So
right.
if you don't have a camera or a computer for that matter,
Yeah.
you can just pick up your phone and dial one of those numbers.
Oh,
And
so I'm not doing anything wrong.
No.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you're perfect. You have audio, you have video, you have light.
Yeah. Well, may I say something about kashrut?
Please.
Marty and I have found over the years, we found that it was an emotional thing. It had to do with feeling connected. And we never really kept kosher in the, in the ultimate sense of the word, with 2 sets of dishes and kosher meat, et cetera, but little things like we stopped eating pork and shellfish and other things like that. And we just felt more of an emotional connection. So that's all I wanted to say. Hi, Jetta.
Hi, Willa.
Yeah.
Phyllis is here. Hello.
Ah, hooray! So that's Willa was asking what that phone is, and that is Phyllis Pearson.
That's right.
That's right. You're prettier, Phyllis.
Damn. Oh, my goodness. Oh, thank you for saying that. You haven't seen me.
So Phyllis, tell us how things are with you.
Well, things are going very smoothly here. They're taking very, very good care of us, keeping us safe and keeping us healthy. Everything is delivered to us, and we're supposed to kind of stay put in our rooms, but who can do that? So I walk outside by the pool, and I have to get out a little bit. And I play bingo every
You like
day.
sneaking out. You told us you were sneaking out.
Yeah, I'm sneaking out. I put my mask on, I sneak out.
Notorious troublemaker.
Yeah, right. What fun would I have if I didn't?
Hi, Sherry. How are you?
I'm hanging in, thank you.
All right.
How are you?
Are you really outside, or is that a backdrop you have there?
I am really sitting outside.
Wow, that's quite a
I'm
view.
finally able to get this far.
Very nice.
It's good.
Becca,
It's good.
Hi,
Hey.
There's Becca.
how are you doing, Becca?
I'm fine, thank you.
Anything new with Joel?
No, it's a waiting game, and waiting is difficult.
Yes.
And are you waiting for him to be able to get surgery?
Yes, I spoke to his doctor yesterday, I think it was. But it's Sunday night. I spoke to him on Friday, and asked if getting any closer to the hospital permitting surgery. Life said there's no indication it will happen. So just wait.
So if he's in the hospital, if he has to stay overnight, you just stay with him 24/7?
I will have to let in with 3 or 4 days. So that's the other reason they don't want to put Joel in there. I don't think it'd be infected, that I'm worthless to him. So, complicated. The person's position, and others waiting for this kind of surgery. Just happened when watching him to make sure, and that's what I do. But
Who's got a dog there?
Hi, this is Owen. Can you see me? Or hear me?
We hear you. We don't see you yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that is. May need to log back in.
Yeah, or just click your video camera. Sherry, you're raising your hand. What's up?
He's muted.
Your voices are going in and out for me.
Yeah, Sherry, did you raise your hand intentionally? No. There's a little icon down at the bottom. You raised your hand. I'll lower it for you. There you go.
I'm back. I just
Hi,
did my
Stan.
coffee.
We see you coming.
Yeah, I got a little confused. So I emailed Joan, yeah, for the password, and then I saw that you eliminated that meeting.
Yeah, I took the password away because we were sending out that email last night, kind of reminding everybody of everything that's going on today. And I felt like people wouldn't have time to get a hold of Joan to get the password, so I just took the risk. I'm like Phyllis, the notorious rule breaker.
I sent another email saying, no, not necessary, or do I have to?
Yeah, no, I took away the password, so
Okay, all right.
we'll just,
No problem.
Rabbinic privilege.
well, it's the risk benefit factor.
Right.
That's always the
Right.
calculation. Michelle, is that you looking very professional there?
I joined from my work computer in my office.
Yeah, you look great in that nice pink blouse. That's lovely.
Is the password going to be eliminated forever or just today?
I don't know, Phyllis.
Okay, wait and see. All right.
Yeah.
You'll notify us.
Yes, I will. I'll
Yeah.
email the link.
Yeah. I would like to share something with everybody that I discovered accidentally.
What is that?
All of you who knew Miriam Salter,
Yes.
she was
Yes.
really such a special friend to Marty and me. And I accidentally discovered that on the Jewish Historical Society website, they have a wonderful video that she made about 8 or 9 years ago, telling how what it was like to arrive in Phoenix from Israel at around 1960, give or take a few years. And it's just marvelous. If you go to the Arizona Jewish Historical Society website and look around, you will find it. If you have trouble, call me. Tell you how to get it.
That'd be good. She was such a presence at Torah Study for years, too.
Right, yeah.
I see my mom connecting up in New York.
There she is.
How's it going there, Sandy?
Hey.
Hi there.
What's
Yeah.
going on?
Oh, it's a beautiful day today. I was walking yesterday in a miserable cold day. Go out later and it's going to be 60 degrees, which is fabulous. 40.
Kind of chilly for here, though.
I'm here, I'm well. What else can I say? It's good.
That's the important part.
All right, well, we're just letting everybody get signed on and say hello.
I have a question,
Yes, ma'am.
2 technical questions. It's up in the right-hand corner. There's a little thing that says record.
Yes.
You want that? Okay, and the other thing is I have 4 little pictures of 4 people at the bottom. How do I get everyone else on there?
So,
Go ahead.
No, Michelle, you're the.
There should be a button up towards the top of the screen if you hover over near where the pictures are. It says gallery view. It'll allow more pictures of people's video to show up.
You won't see me because I don't have that kind of device.
Got it. Thank you.
Now I got you all.
No problem.
It's all good. You're in our gallery here today.
The Rogues Gallery. Wayne, how are you doing? We see you, but we don't hear you.
Doing well.
I can see Alan now.
What are you and Lois up to?
Not a whole lot other than watching operas and reading a lot more newspapers. I subscribe to the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post. So I can spend hours reading that.
Uh-huh. So did you get the physical newspapers or you read them online?
Oh, no, I'm online. I read books online, on e-readers. I don't read physical stuff hardly. It's too hard for me. The print's too small. Got to hold it too close to your face.
You got to get those new glasses that magnify apparently.
Yeah, what I need.
Of the buy me online kind of thing,
I think Felix still likes the books.
Yes.
Doesn't like the books, period. Okay. Felix,
Owen disappeared and never came back.
No.
Ah, there he is. Owen, we see you now.
Hi, Owen.
Hi there. Hi, Ellen.
Ah, excellent.
But does anyone have any idea why some of the people, because mine has it all the time, have that black border on like the right and left? Because some others have it too, but most don't. There must be an adjustment somewhere.
That's a question for Michelle. She's got to unmute.
Muted.
Yeah.
So
There we go. Helps if I'm not muted. It depends on what device you're using. If you're using a phone or a tablet, the aspect ratio of the camera is different than, like, say, a laptop. So you're going to have a wider picture on a laptop screen than you would, like, say, a phone or a small tablet type device. It also, if you're using a tablet or a phone, if you're holding it like with your phone upright, it will also show a narrower picture.
Thank you.
Makes sense.
No problem.
Yeah, I'm looking at the screen, and it's such a dividend, or a dividend of what's going on. We have, it looks like 25 people here. And they wouldn't all fit in the room. We'd have a real squeeze.
That's true. Especially with all of that stuff in there.
And everybody is in a comfortable chair of their own choosing.
Yeah.
The videos aren't 6 feet apart, though. It's okay. I think we're okay there.
Well, I just fixed it. I
Nina,
changed
how are you?
the
What are you
widescreen.
doing these days?
Oh, but they were all checking.
Sorry, hey, I'm good. Nothing new on my end. I almost forgot. I'm glad I did it.
Uh-huh. Well, glad you remembered. Are you like in school, interning?
Yeah, they moved our rotation online, so I'm doing a bunch of classes and critical care course stuff. So just waiting, but we'll see. Officially start in June, so I don't know if I'll actually be at the hospital then, but nothing too.
Well, good. So we've got another minute or two before we officially begin. Anybody have anything else for the good of the order? Anything on a personal front to report or comment on?
One more question.
Yes.
I got the 369. I can see 9 people. How do I get the rest?
Michelle, could you get more than 9 people?
It depends on what kind of device you're using. Are you on a laptop or a phone or a tablet?
I'm on an iPad.
You're on an iPad, so that may just be the size limit for that screen. Because I can see, let's see, we've got 5 by 5 on mine, so I can see up to 25 tiles.
That's what I have.
Videos. So it can depend on your device. Like, because if I use my phone to dial into one of these calls, I can only see like 5 people at a time, and then I have to like tab through and scroll pages to see other video tiles.
How do you scroll?
So I don't know if your app is different than mine on my phone. Let me find it.
It's kind of old, fairly old, so it might not be as up to date.
Michelle is 5 by 5 the match.
Sharon, look on the left or the right screen for an arrow.
Yeah,
that might let you tab between the things.
Yeah, there should be an arrow or even like dots at the bottom of the screen to let you know that there's more than one page that you can scroll through.
Minimize meeting. Minimize meeting?
No, that'd be the reverse.
No.
Yeah. That just
It's nice to see everybody.
It sure is, Jetta.
Sharon,
Well, at least
can you swipe it like this?
Yeah, you
Swipe.
should be able to just swipe with your finger across your screen to other screens.
I swipe, but it doesn't go to another screen. It
Yeah.
stays on the same screen.
Okay. Your app might be a little different because I've got like an Android phone. And I think the iPhone and iPad versions are a little different than what I've
I
got.
swiped the other way and it worked.
Oh, well then there you go.
That's why I have 9 more.
Okay, cool.
I just get 9 in a row.
Yeah, so that's probably the limitation for your screen.
Okay, great.
So
Thank you.
I just put in the chat box Chi Isiagu's phone number. She has been very, very gracious and helpful to members of the community who have had troubles with Zoom and wanting to learn some of the nuances of Zoom. So feel free after this conversation, if you're looking for some more support, give her a call, and you could tell her I told you to call, and you know, she'll kind of walk you through some of the nuances if you're looking for particular guidance. Robin, you get the last word of weighing in here, and then we're going to jump right in. And hi, John, we see you.
Yeah. Hey, Leanna's coming too.
Excellent.
I got nothing to say.
Yeah, where's that picture from behind you?
That is from the 40th Street Trailhead. Hiking that in the morning. That wasn't today though. I did go today. So in the last 30 days or this 30 days that Trump was saying, you know, after 15, he wanted to do 30. So I said I was going to do 3 miles every day for 30 days. If I can't hike 3 miles, I was going to ride my bike. So I, you know, my ratio for bike riding is 12 miles is equivalent to 3 miles hiking.
Right.
So yeah, I've been doing something every day. I'm pretty excited about that. And I got to tell you, this morning was fantastic. I climbed up all myself. There was nobody there except my dog and I had about 40 minutes just to sit there with the sunrise and write in my journal, and there was no one there. It was fantastic.
Beautiful.
That's wonderful.
We went to McDowell Mountain Park yesterday.
Ooh.
And while we were riding, I FaceTimed my mom so she could just see the view of the mountains and the wildflowers. And looks just like Manhattan, right, Mom?
Oh, yeah. Just like where I walk. Rockefeller Center was closed yesterday, and the doors of St. Patrick's were closed. They had been open at the beginning of this whole thing, but now they're shut tight, and so was the entrance to the plaza at Rockefeller Center.
Wow.
Wow.
That's where my office was.
Oh, that's right. So we are in Leviticus chapter 26. Let's start off with a blessing here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher tirshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot. Amen. So we are in chapter 26 of Leviticus. We're in a new parsha starting with verse 3. So verses 1 and 2 were the conclusion of the parsha of Bahar, and here we are starting Chok is one of the words for a law. So we have the expression Chukim umishpatim, laws and statutes, or statutes and ordinances, variously translated. So Bechukotai, in my laws. But the first word of the parsha is im, which means if. So this is a conditional covenant that's expressed in this chapter of the Torah. God says, if you do X, I will do Y. So this is not an unconditional one-way relationship between God and the Israelites. You do for me, I do for you. So starting off, if you walk in my statutes, we know both of those words. Mitzvot, my mitzvot, my commandments. Tishmoru, to guard, to protect my commandments. Tishmoru, just like Vishamru, you know, Vishamru, V'nei Israel, Shamor. So, Ve'asitem otam, and do them. So it's not just protecting them, guarding them. We're not putting them in a museum or just in a book, va'asita motam, you have to actually put them into practice. So if you guard them, protect them, and actually do them, all kinds of great things are going to happen. You'll experience all sorts of rewards. And we started reading on reward and punishment from this book, Field's A Torah Commentary for Our Time. And I believe the section begins on page 158. So hopefully you have that in front of you.
Somewhere?
Page 158, there we go. And we'll notice the other book. Well, I don't have the book right in front of me. We noticed that Fields quotes Levine, who we already had read, kind of giving the overview and introduction to this section. So I think that's right where we left off. And who shared their screen? Stan.
Yeah.
So Stan, you've got the handout right up there?
No.
Oh.
No, not really. It just says Zoom.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you'd want to not share your screen then.
Well, let's get, I gotta get out of that. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to just start reading for expedience's sake here. And if you have background noise, if you would please mute yourself. I don't like to be dictatorial and just mute people, and it's hard for me to necessarily know who exactly is making the noise. So
how do I get rid of this, by the way?
So at the bottom of your screen, there's something that says share screen that you clicked. And if you unclick that.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
On my screen is a big white thing that says your meeting should start in a few seconds.
Yeah, that's because Stan is sharing his screen.
Yeah, I gotta get.
Inadvertently.
Oops.
He's trying to figure out how to stop sharing his screen.
Okay, so I don't do anything.
You don't have to do anything.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to get out of this. Let me see.
Yeah. So at the very bottom of your screen, it says share screen, or actually maybe at the top it might say stop sharing screen.
I'm looking at the top. Stop sharing. There we go.
There you go. You're back.
You know, as the kids say, sharing is caring, but we don't always need the sharing. So, so here we go. So I am reading on page 158 from Torah Commentary for Our Time. In elaborating on these principles being reward and punishment, Rabbi Chama ben Hanina maintains that all the commandments of Torah were given to human beings in order to safeguard them from their inclination to make evil choices. If one faithfully acts according to the commandments, rewards will follow. If not, one will suffer the consequences. So this is clearly a very controversial point of view. I imagine that most of us do not imagine that kind of very specific correlation between reward, between behavior and reward and punishment. It's the callers in the background, and I don't think they can mute themselves. So. All right, Robin is suggesting, I'm going to mute everybody because I'm going to read for a little while here and see if we can stop that background noise. It'd be nice if Zoom had a mute all kind of a feature, so you didn't have to do this individually. Okay, that's better. All right. So, so Rabbi Chama ben Hanina is saying, if you follow the mitzvot, you'll be rewarded. If you don't follow them, you'll be punished. A principle that it's very, very hard for us to maintain, and the situation that we're in right now with the virus, I think, just exponentially drives that home. What their Rabbi Chama ben Hanina and those who articulate that perspective are really suggesting is that if you do wrong, if you suffer, that it must be punishment for some wrongdoing, and that if you are good, you will necessarily be rewarded. And it's a completely untenable position. Obviously, we see so many good people in the world who suffer. We see so many terrible people, or let's say people who make bad choices who seem to thrive. So this idea that what occurs in our lives is correlated to our behavior, and we can therefore judge those who suffer and say, well, that's Job's friends. What did you do to deserve this? You must have done something to deserve this. It can't be that God is righteous and powerful and benevolent, and yet good people suffer. So Rabbi Eliezer illustrates this view by claiming that God presented the Jewish people with a package from heaven containing the Torah and a sword. If you observe what is written in the Torah, God told the people, then you will be saved from the sword. If you do not live according to the Torah, then you will be destroyed by the sword. So all going back to that very first word of the Parsha, im bechukotai telechu, if. It's this view of reward for obedience to the commandments of Torah and punishment for disobedience is echoed in a story told by the early rabbis. It is about a man who falls from the deck of a ship into the sea. The captain throws him a line and tells him, grasp it tightly, don't let go. If you do, you will lose your life. The Torah, say the rabbis, is the lifeline of the Jewish people. If they grasp it faithfully and practice its commandments, then they will live. If they let go of it, pay no attention to it, then they will perish. Their rewards and punishments have to do with the choices they make. So none of this is to say that there are not consequences of the choices we make. We don't have total control. We can do everything right and still suffer. And we can do everything wrong and still be rewarded. And yet, like most things, we find that there is a balance point where there is some truth in the middle. So, for example, Robin was talking about her commitment to exercise. Clearly, we have a better chance of being healthy if we take good care of our bodies. Alan started off early talking about a kashrut. So if we think about the food that we eat, if we think about exercise, we can influence our physical well-being. Is it a guarantee that we will be rewarded with good health if we do everything right? Absolutely not. There are plenty of people who eat right and exercise and still suffer terrible illnesses, but we can influence it. So I'd like us to think about two things in this context of reward and punishment. One is how do our individual choices influence the outcomes in our lives? What are the things that we can control? And number two, even if we don't think that this idea of reward and punishment as a consequence of observing the mitzvot works on an individual basis, could we say that from a broader perspective, it does work for the Jewish people as a whole? Is there any sense in which, as the Jewish community continues to make good and appropriate choices, that the fundamental commitment is that the people will endure? And, of course, I'm not ready to argue in favor of that. I just want to throw out both of those questions as topics for conversation because, Alan, you were saying how, your colleague Sam is teaching to the kids about the Holocaust. And there are those who would contend that the Holocaust was a punishment for the assimilation of the German Jewish community. And I can't comfortably go there.
Of course not. If I could respond to that for a moment.
Please.
First, I would reference a lot of people to later today, if you haven't seen it, there's an episode of West Wing. Some of you might be familiar with the episode. And it deals with the president coming into a room with reporters. And there's a radio talk show person that's in the room with the president. Rabbi, I'll send that to you so that you could send it out if need be.
Okay.
And it's a short clip. I show it to all my kids at the start of the year. And basically, it directs the president talking about this particular issue of taking one particular thing and blaming it in the Bible or the Torah on the reason for things happening. And it's really poignant. I'll just send it out. But I mean, I think all of us, I could be wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, I think all of us at some point in our life have run into somebody who has said, well, this happened because. And if the because is due to a religious practice, not a physical hurting something, or the lack of observance of something, I find it to be an affront to what I think religion should be. So that's my take on how I look at this. One of the things that I do with my grandkids, and then I'll be quiet, is that up in my wall, I've got a saying that most of you have probably heard. It's attributed to Mother Teresa, but turns out to come from something else. I won't read it all, but you'll get the gist. People are often unreasonable and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you're kind, people can accuse you of ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you find happiness, people will be jealous. Be happy anyway. And the list goes on and on. So I think that's how you kind of have to look at some of this. That's just my take on it. No matter how you do things, things are going to go wrong. But be good anyway, is my take on this whole idea.
So I think that the Torah is coming from a more primitive place and appealing to a sense of be good because you'll be rewarded, and be good because if you're not good, you'll be punished. And perhaps in that generation, for a group of people who has just escaped from slavery, you know, where they didn't have the opportunity to make choices and where their actions were controlled and there were immediate negative consequences for wrong behavior, perhaps this kind of a theology was an important motivation. So we read it from a sophisticated perspective of 3,000 years and an expectation that we can and will make appropriate choices for their own sake rather than out of being motivated by fear. So we're reading it out of context. But this commentary that we're looking at here is a Reform commentary. So it's moving us now in the discussion through some traditional perspectives, but it's going to ultimately bring us to a Reform critique of those traditional perspectives. But, you know, I'm here to tell you that this whole chapter is going to be curses and blessings. So, you know, everything that if you're not good, blah, 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 blah. And if you are good, you know, everything's going to be wonderful. So Does anybody have the text in front of them who could continue reading more on the top of page 159?
I can. I have it. It's
Thanks.
Barry.
So this, thanks, Barry, this classic view.
Okay. This classic view of reward for loyalty to the Torah and punishment for disloyalty is reflected within the 13 principles of faith written by Moses Maimonides and included in most traditional prayer books for many centuries.
So let me just interrupt you there. Those of you who grew up in a traditional congregation might have remembered the Friday night service concluding with Yigdal, Yigdal, Elohim Chai, Vehi Hishtahabach, right? So Yigdal is a poetic liturgical version of Maimonides' 13 principles of faith.
Now, the 11th principle declares, I believe with perfect faith that the Creator rewards those who keeps the commandments and punishes those who transgress them. According to Maimonides, everything depends upon the free choice of human beings. If they do good, they will be rewarded with good. If they choose evil, they will suffer painful consequences. What about those, however, who are loyal to the Torah, who faithfully observe all commandments, but rather than enjoying the rewards of peace of mind and material benefits, bear burdens of misery and pain? How do those who claim that God rewards all who keeps the commandments and punishes all who do not explain the suffering of good people? Some Jewish thinkers, like Rabbi Eliezer ben Simon, who suffered persecution by the Romans, teach that human beings and nations should always see themselves as half guilty and half worthy, knowing that the next choice will tip the balance to either reward or punishment. Clearly, from Eliezer's point of view, those who suffer have made wrong choices, even though they fail to recognize where they have made their mistakes. On the other hand, there are teachers who believe that the rewards and punishments are not given in this world, but in heaven. Human beings are judged by God at the end of their lives. They reap the benefits of living a good life or suffer the consequences of evil decisions throughout all eternity. Because the mix of good deeds and sins is so complex, it is only God who can make an ultimate judgment. For this reason, as the medieval Jewish philosopher Joseph Albo suggests, God dispenses material and spiritual rewards and punishments not only during life on earth, but also after death in heaven.
Right. So we know we've looked at concepts of the afterlife, and the Torah, while it alludes to an afterlife and maybe a little bit more so in the Tanakh, it's not a well-developed focal point where Jewish thinkers really, thanks, Barry, that's super helpful for you to share that, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's Nina. Oh, Nina, thank you, Nina. So so where does Judaism start to develop a more comprehensive perspective on an afterlife? During the Greek period, around the time of the Maccabees, so we've experienced the destruction of the first temple, the diaspora, the return to the land of Israel, but in a much, much more modest sense, and really coming to terms with the fact that we're never going to return to the glory of the era of King David and King Solomon and a big kingdom with a beautiful big temple and a palace in Jerusalem. And so that's, first of all, Greek philosophers had a more articulated and evolved sense of an afterlife. So there was that Greek influence, and there was also the acknowledgement that, you know, if we're looking for reward in this world, it's just not coming. So in order to reconcile how could there be a just and good and caring God and the righteous suffer, so the idea of the reward of the righteous and the punishment of the wicked got shunted into the next world. And that was the only way to keep all of those theological constructs in place. In the contemporary world, as we'll see, there are those who just answer the question differently and say, no, God's power is not ultimate, that God has consciously self-limited in order to allow space for us to make choices and suffer the consequences of those choices. So the afterlife is not necessarily the only answer to how we reconcile all of these concepts, but it is an answer that entered in those couple of hundred years before the turn of the millennium. So now Nina graciously put that up. Nina, you want to read for us in the box?
Oh. Sorry, I have to tab back and forth between Zoom and the actual screen. So let me
oh, okay. Well, we don't want to make your life hard. We saw you're studying there.
Yeah. So, a guarantee for the future world. Rabbi Harold M. Schweiss points out that some of the ancient rabbis repudiate the doctrine of reward and punishment as running counter to their sense of justice. The suffering of the righteous is, in fact, a badge of honor, not a stigma for transgression. The Holy One brings suffering upon the righteous of the world in order that they may inherit the future world.
All right, you don't have to give the references there. So Schulweiss, he's not saying that's how he feels. He's saying that this is one of the ways that the rabbis in the ancient world deal with it, is to say that the righteous may almost choose to consciously suffer in this world so that they can have a better reward. Like, let me get the suffering out of the way now. So I'll choose to suffer my punishment in this world, and then I won't have to do teshuvah. I won't have to suffer in the next world. And not a terribly satisfying answer, I don't think. But so some people would rather deal with the pain and the suffering now in hopes of a future reward. Okay, next, Rabbi Roland Gittleson.
Does not believe in a God who sits in heaven and rewards those who live in accordance with the commandments of the Torah and punishes those who do not. Instead, Rabbi Glitzen holds that there are 4 sources of suffering. 1, defiance of nature's physical laws. 2, ignorance of these physical laws. 3, defiance of nature's spiritual laws. And 4, ignorance of these spiritual laws.
So he's basically following Maimonides there, who says that a lot of what we experience as suffering in the world, in our lives, comes from living in a material world. And there are certain principles that are built into having a material nature, things that go wrong in our bodies, being in the wrong place at the wrong time when there's an avalanche, that this is not God's specifically punishing us as individuals. There are physical laws. The spiritual laws is more interesting. I guess he's talking about what we might call karma, that if we continually make negative choices, karma is going to come back and bite us. And then we've got a third option there, Claude Montefiore. You want to read that one too, Nina?
The explanation?
Yeah.
Okay, explanation of suffering. Suffering brings out and develops character. It supplies a field for all sorts of virtues, for resignation, faith, courage, resource, endurance. It stimulates us. It purifies.
All right, so I'm interested in responses to that.
You know what? It reminds me a lot of the Kubler-Ross about death and dying.
The 5 stages of grief?
5 stages of grief. It really does. It just seems to dovetail very well with that.
So resignation.
Yeah, which could be acceptance, and then you could even say, faith, courage. You could also look upon as the anger side of the stages of grief.
So suffering brings out and develops character.
Yeah, that's also that phrase of if it doesn't kill you, it'll make you stronger.
Right. I see Sarah Lee shaking your head.
Yes, I think these are all just excuses so that we don't think about really going into it further. They're just sort of like almost platitudes. To me, anyway. I don't understand the whole concept of holding a spiritual feeling that there's something to be rewarded after I'm dead, because we really don't know. And I think that means that some people have an awful lot of faith in that, and I don't understand I don't have that kind of faith.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if Montefiore here is even talking about reward and punishment in a next life. I think he's saying that there is a reward to be had in this life through the refinement of character that comes from suffering. And I'm just thinking of, I can't remember the source, but there's a Talmudic reference where the rabbi is suffering and his friend is consoling him by explaining to him exactly this. Well, you're going to experience great reward from your suffering. And he says, I don't want the suffering and I don't want the reward.
Yeah.
Can I bring up, Rabbi? This is Becca. So I have a question. By reading this, it says that suffering will bring about these things and develop character, which seem to imply that the absence of suffering stunts the development of your character. And I find that an uncomfortable, there are other ways to develop your character. I would think that they don't need to be done through suffering.
Yeah, Sherry, are you raising your hand?
She needs to be unmuted.
Rabbi, it's
Can you
very.
hear me or not?
Yeah, I can't get to her with the screen share.
This is Dan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I corrected something.
Oh, here's Sherry. I'll unmute you.
There.
I was just, the vision I had when that paragraph was being read is medieval monks self-flagellating.
Yes.
You find justification for almost anything in the Torah. And I'd never seen this before, but the notion that we have to suffer in order to know good seems antithetical to the core values we hold.
Yes, and I mean, Judaism is not a monastic tradition. It's not an ascetic tradition. In fact, just the opposite. We're going to be held accountable for all of the good things in the world that were halachically acceptable that we chose to deprive ourselves of. So, we're not required to suffer in this way. On the other hand, can anyone make a case that there is some truth here? Not Becca, that the only way to develop character is through suffering, but that we can grow from painful experiences. Robin?
So I think that, first of all, the title explanation of suffering, I think it should actually just be suffering is. Like it exists. And something I heard, I can't remember who said it, but was that, like heroes are revealed in times of trouble. And it's during those conflict. I mean, suffering doesn't have to be horrible. It's just a difficult time you're not sitting at a beach kicking back. But I'm also reminded to, is it the Nephilim? Like how good is it to abstain from something when you're never exposed to it? So if you're exposed to it, that's when you actually get to develop your character. Doesn't mean it has to be suffering in that particular word. I think people are just, that word just might have the wrong meaning for what the rest of the paragraph says.
Yeah, so back to Alan's opening comment about kashrut, that's what Prager says about kashrut, is that he has more admiration for someone who didn't keep kosher and then takes it on than for someone who always kept kosher. Because if you know how tasty treif is, and then give it up, that aspect of self-discipline is also an important part of what we learn from kashrut. So, Alan, if you're still there, that's something else.
I'm here.
Yeah, that's something else to talk about with the kids. This idea that learning to control our own desires is also an important part of kashrut.
Thank you. One of the things I was thinking as people were talking, we went through this explanation of suffering and how this kind of points to the fact that through suffering we grow. And it seems that is a logical way of thinking about a suffering situation versus what did I do that would offend God? And then on the opposite side of that, knowing me the way you do, I simply look at Monty Python's view of this, always look on the bright side of life as best you can. And so I think that looking at the growth that can come out of suffering is just the human way, and platitude is probably a good word, but it's the human way of trying to make some sense out of what you can't make sense out of.
So let's look at this paragraph in the context of where we are right now. One might say, in a way, we're all suffering. Thank God none of us is suffering from the physical virus at the moment, but we're suffering in the lack of normalcy and the constraints in our lives that we don't routinely experience. Are you experiencing, do you see us experiencing any of these sorts of virtues? Resignation, faith, courage, resource, endurance. I would say that personally, I can relate to all of these as especially being consequences of this particular moment in which we find ourselves.
I think, forgive me, but I think it might be different than it was years ago, and that now we are experiencing worldwide community suffering on a completely different level, where we're taking things happening around the world right into our own living room. And I'm wondering if we're starting to think less about how this is affecting us and really how it's affecting human beings in general.
So even more empathy, compassion, those sorts of qualities emerging.
Well, we can see that. I remember asking specific people, my parents' age, that lived in the United States. They were Jewish. They lived in the United States while the Holocaust was going on. And both Amy and I would mention to them, what was it like for you? And a lot of them were like, we really didn't realize it. You can't live that way any longer.
Right.
So it's a very different perspective for us. And most of us, I would think everybody sitting here, we're in pretty comfortable positions compared to the rest of the world, the majority of the world right now. And we see all this going on. And I think we just look at it from a less personal perspective and a more humankind perspective.
Or on a global level. That,
right.
We actually have to help others in order to protect ourselves. Those that suffer without food, other places in the world, as a practical standpoint, they're guinea pigs for, or very vulnerable to pandemics like we're talking about. So we can't just ignore what's going on because it will reach us. That's not necessarily, but we should be taking care of humanity as well if we can.
So
everywhere.
Can I say something?
Sherry is politely raising her hand. So Sherry, and then Merle, you wanted to jump in. So Sherry, and then Merle, and then let's see if we can move forward a little bit.
I serve on the research committee for the Ad Council, which is the National Public Service Development Organization. And they do a lot of, they're obviously doing a lot of research and trying to understand what's going on in the country for purposes of public service communication. And one of the things they did was look at the emotions related to Americans' response to the COVID virus. And the number one emotion, pardon not, is gratitude. So I think that tells us something about how we as humans look around us and say, thank you for what we have.
That's encouraging to hear.
Yes.
My midah of the day, those of you who listen to the midah of the day today was envy. And, you know, envy, of course, is the opposite of gratitude. Merle, last word, and then let's see if we can read a little more.
I just think that suffering in the context of what's going on now is, to me, a totally different, it's a different, it's not like suffering, it's a different kind of pain with people that have small businesses that are receiving no money, people with small businesses who had to let people go and they're trying to get them unemployment. I see a lot of really mad people because they don't have any money, they can't get food. Right now, I feel like suffering is a vicious circle. I don't know that it can be defined, and I don't know that it will develop character until after this is over and people start to regain their life, their businesses, whatever, if they can. So I'm looking at suffering different. It's a different kind of pain. To me, when I look at this, suffering to me says suffering, you know, from illness or family issues or whatever, but I see other issues coming from what's going on now, which is a different kind of suffering than we've experienced, at least at our age, before.
Thank you for that. I do want to mention before we wrap up that if you are on this call and are not on our email distro list for Torah Study, please let Robin Young know, because she's the keeper of our master distro list. So, for example, Alan said he was going to send out that clip. I'll send out a recording of this session. If you want to be able to receive notices, I'll send the Zoom link for the next session. If you want to be able to receive those things, please, maybe Robin, you can put up in the chat your preferred email address. And let's see if we can read a tiny bit more here. I'm going to continue at the bottom of the page. For many moderns, neither the conclusion that the world and human life in it are too baffling to understand, nor that God rewards and punishes in mysterious ways or in an afterlife in heaven is acceptable. Okay, so that's us. How, it is asked, can we explain the suffering of innocent children who were put to their deaths in Nazi concentration camps, or the agony of good people who endure the torture of disease, or the cruelty and brutality of others? So clearly that's the question. Where are God's rewards and punishments in situations like these? Rabbi Harold S. Kushner, in his book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, argues that one reason for the suffering of innocent good people is that our being human leaves us free to hurt each other, and God can't stop us without taking away the freedom that makes us human. In other words, human pain is not the result of God rewarding or punishing, but is a result of human beings harming one another. So that's the vast majority of suffering, is suffering that we inflict on each other as a consequence of our choices. Kushner puts the matter in this way. Human beings can cheat each other, rob each other, hurt each other, and God can only look down in pity and compassion at how little we have learned over the ages about how human beings should behave. When people ask, where was God in Auschwitz? How could he have permitted the Nazis to kill so many innocent men, women, and children? My response is that it was not God who caused it. It was caused by human beings choosing to be cruel to their fellow men. So that's what I was talking before about God self-limiting in order to facilitate human freedom of choice. But what about the sickness of innocent people, the suffering of those afflicted with disease, crippled by illness? Are these God's punishments for not observing the Torah's commandments? Kushner, whose son Aaron died in his teens of a rare disease, writes, I don't believe that God causes mental retardation in children or chooses who should suffer from.
I'm on a class right now. I'll call you back, okay?
Or who chooses who should suffer from muscular dystrophy. The God I believe in does not send us the problem. That God gives us the strength to cope with the problem. So I am going to stop there because I have Musar at 10:30, need to get ready for that. But I do thank you all for joining us today, and I will send you information about the next gathering. Any final thoughts or comments?
Thank you. Just to do a quick suggestion. Go binge the Good Place, which just finished its 4-5 season run. It's all about the afterlife.
I've heard good things about that show, no pun intended, but haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I think Jesse and Zan really like it. So, little reminder too, 1 o'clock today is our conversation about Finish Strong. I have the information up on Facebook. This is a must not miss book. Even if you didn't read it, join us. I do have on Facebook, plus it was in the EHI, the link to the recording of the first discussion. So you've got 2.5 hours to listen to that, the first part if you didn't hear it, and then join us at 1 o'clock for the second part of the discussion.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Is that only through Facebook? Because I don't use Facebook.
Are you on the EHI distro list?
No, but I didn't join because I didn't ask before if it was only accessible through Facebook.
So I'm not sure what you're asking about accessible. Are you asking about
to join
the discussion this afternoon?
Yes.
No, that is it's going to be a Zoom just like this is, and I'm looking to see if I still have it somewhere in my email that link. Anybody have quick access to the EHI? I think.
Yeah, it's definitely in there.
I know it is. Let me see if I already deleted that. And
I can find it too, but if somebody else is faster.
Yeah, I'm looking as fast as I can.
I can send it to you. You could forward it. I have the Eli link.
Let's see here. Oh, I think we're getting there. Here we go. Stand by. It's coming your way.
Actually, nice out. Maybe we'll come out.
There we go. Can you see it now, Bella?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
This was great. Thank you.
All right, well, wonderful. So see, Robin also makes available all the handouts online. So if you don't have a copy of what we're reading from a Torah commentary for our time field, go to the URL that Robin set up and she has it scanned in there.
Can I have Robin's number again? This is Jetta.
It's in the chat. I'll type it in again if you can see it.
This is Sharon, and I'm so glad to see all your shiny
Yeah,
faces.
we love to see you,
Sharon.
Sharon.
Great seeing everyone.
Yeah, Jetta, are you able to see the chat box?
Yes.
Okay, so do you see Robin put up there RDY?
Yes, I got it.
Yeah, so
Oh,
just
it's
drop
email.
her
I
in.
missed the L. I missed the L. Oh, well.
Oh, no. Okay. We're all set?
Okay.
All right, good. I'll look forward to seeing
Oseh shalom.
you soon. Yeah. Oseh
Thank you.
shalom b'romav. Booyah aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yimru.
Amen.
Amen. All right.